Good morning. I'm John Saunders, as you saw in the introductory slide there, founder of Forward Advisory Solutions, and I couldn't be more honored to host Lynn Yap's book launch today for Asia and Australia. One of the big goals for Lynn in today's session and her book is to really help everybody feel empowered. What can each of us do to make a difference for people and the planet each and every day? As you saw and have heard, Lynn recently wrote a book called The Altruistic Capital and founded the Activate Network and works with companies to increase the inclusion of women in technology. She graduated from Wharton with an MBA and worked in investment banking, taking companies like Facebook public. Today, she wants to shift the business conversation from thinking in short-term profits to thinking about long-term prosperity for everyone. How can we create a positive impact for the planet and in our communities? And this is where the book came from, Altruistic Capitalist. It's a culmination of her research and interviews with social entrepreneurs and corporate executives. Personally, I've had the great privilege of getting to know Lynn over the last 6 or so months in her author journey and getting to know her as a friend and learning about her incredible thoughtfulness on working to help businesses do better for their employees, communities, customers, and ultimately their shareholders, but not necessarily prioritizing that order. But as she shared, shareholders, they don't always have to come first. There is a better way. So here's the setup for today. Over the next 30 minutes, as Lynn discusses her book and we run through a series of questions, we really want you to think about, how does doing good for the community and the planet relate to your work, your specific situation? What example of businesses or companies do you see operating for purpose or profit and have a good mission that's helping others? And what examples have you seen where following purpose does not result in a profit? I'm sure we've got many of those out there. For today's session, your engagement and questions are really important to maximizing our time together and learning the most from Lynn's story. So to make sure we know how to submit questions, as I think someone put in the chat earlier, and get a sense of where everyone's joining in from, please go to the chat feature, if you would, on your screen and type your name and where you're joining in from. And this way we'll know that the chat feature works and everyone knows how to ask a question, because as we go through the session today, we'll look into that chat to pull questions in as we move into the Q&A. Sanjeev, who's behind the scenes, will be monitoring those, Lynn and I as well, and we'll get those on the screen. So if you would just take a quick minute and do that for us, and we'll get fired up here. So it's just the comment section. There's, hi everybody, good morning. Looks like several of the folks have figured out the chat already. That is fantastic. If everybody would just take a second and do that, and then it's the comment box or the chat box, depending on which service you're working in on or coming in on. But just want to make sure everyone knows how to use that tool so we can make sure we get all your questions answered. Adelaide, Australia. Good evening, Australia. Good evening, Australia. Good morning. Looks like several dozen people have figured out the chat feature already. That is great. So as we go through, please, as I said, add your questions to there. But one quick thought before we get started, and I want to share one of the praise quotes Lynn received for her book, which I think is just extraordinary, really paints the picture of what the book is about. It helps you see, I think, a really good glimpse into how Lynn likes to think about things. The Altruistic Capitalist is a must-read for business and community leaders. Author Lynn Yap's extensive research and skillful storytelling are game changers for the way leaders need to rethink their approach to meeting the needs of all stakeholders. This is a quote from Bill Simpson, retired president and CEO of Hershey Entertainment and Resorts Company. I couldn't think of a better way to help set the stage and introduce the roadmap that Lynn has produced. Just unbelievable work here. So now, please join me in congratulating Lynn in publishing her first book, The Altruistic Capital, and let's bring her on stage. Welcome her to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, John, for welcoming me onto the stage. I'm so excited, a little bit nervous to be here today, but I'm so glad for everyone who is dialing in, for everyone who is joining in from all over the world. Firstly, I want to say thank you so much. Thank you to my immediate family. Thank you to my extended family who's joining in from Malaysia, from Singapore, from Hong Kong. I really could not have done it without your love and your support, the kind words I've received throughout the past year and bringing me towards this journey. Thank you.
Lynn, thanks so much. It's great to see you, and I really appreciate you having me on. So let's get started with a few questions, and then we'll open up to the group for Q&A. So writing a book is no easy challenge. It takes an incredible amount of time, so much research, tracking all these people down to do the interviews. So you have to have a reason behind this, right? So could you share with the group, why did you write this book, and why is it important now that businesses take action to do better?
Thank you for those questions. Yes. So for me, business doing well and doing good and doing well is a topic that's very close to my heart. Often when I speak about it, why is it important for business to do good? I hear a lot of resistance. I hear people say, well, I don't have the time. I don't have the resources. It doesn't fit in my budget. And I basically just don't know how to do good in business. So the first step in any transformation and change is mindset. So I wanted to write a book based on my personal experience and based on the conversations I've had with different people. How is it that we can have the right mindset in order to do good in business to create a positive impact on the planet and on the people around us? So that's our employees, our suppliers, the community, consumers of our businesses and our brands, and of course, the environment. Now, in terms of why now, why I think it's very important now, COVID-19 has exposed and highlighted some of the problems that we have in our society that's coming to a tipping point. So things like climate change and inequality has reached a state where we need to do something about it. COVID-19 didn't create these problems, but it really brought to the front how important it is for us to act now. And if we don't act now, these will have destabilizing effects on all of us, on our livelihoods and our lives. So that's kind of why I decided this was important to kind of take the momentum and talk to businesses in terms of creating good in their businesses right now.
What I find fascinating about your argument, Lynn, is that you're talking about through helping others, you're actually helping yourself in many ways. And I think that I love the concept of this mindset shift because it's so important. And that's really what this is about, getting outside of ourselves a little bit, looking across a broader landscape and seeing and realizing if I do help others, it can actually help myself as well. So why do you think companies haven't shifted their business model to a more purpose-driven approach yet? And what are some of the stumbling blocks that you've seen?
Good question. It's not a new thing that businesses need to do good, but I think some of the reasons why companies have stumbled or have not completely, not the entire business community has shifted forward into being more purpose-driven, is because there have been things that focus them on the short term. So one of the things that started is in 1970, Milton Friedman, one of the world's best economists, he wrote an article in the New York Times saying, the social responsibility of business is to increase profits. And that has been the message that business schools and business textbooks have trained us to think. Add into the mix of that, we have things such as quarterly reporting for public companies. We have analysts pushing us to report on the bottom line, and also the way we incentivize executives. This has all kind of culminated and push us into thinking, all right, how are we supposed to increase our bottom line? And there's just growth, and growth without thinking more in the long term and without thinking more about the other aspects that are non-financial. What are the impacts on our planet, on the environment, as well as the people around us?
It's interesting. So often companies say people are our most important asset, right? And then we've got many stories from your book about how companies have proven that isn't always the case. You've got a few of your own for sure. So, what can be some of the benefits if companies take this more balanced approach to their interests along with their stakeholders, employees, and customers? How can they win in that environment?
There are so many benefits, John. I wouldn't know where to start. Let's talk about the benefits in terms of, let's talk about having a purpose-driven culture, for instance. I like to use the example of Best Buy. Best Buy was in a state where analysts were writing them off. They said, this company is going to go bankrupt. They need to cut down stores. They need to cut employees. What happened was they hired Hubert Joly, the CEO of Best Buy, for a really long time. And how he transformed Best Buy into what they are today is to root the purpose of the organization, of the company, in enriching the lives of others through technology. Now, and when he did that, the team around him, he didn't write like a sales guidebook to say, all right, these are the things you should do when you meet a customer. Instead, he said, all right, we want to enrich the lives of others through technology. And how the employees took it was, who is it that we want to help? And they chose to help the elderly and the people at risk. How they did that was they thought, all right, what are the things that we can offer this group of people in our community in order that they may live independently for a longer time? So think about connected devices, alert monitors that can help them when they're in trouble. These alert monitors, for instance, will contact the emergency services or family members when they are in trouble at home. Connected devices can also help them to do their groceries or improve and remind them to take their medication. So these are some of the things in which that helps the end customer, but it also really engaged the employees. They thought, well, I'm really improving the lives of my community, the community around me. It could even be a family member of the customers. And when that happens, I, as an employee, I feel good. I feel I have meaning and purpose in what I do in my day-to-day job. I feel more engaged, and therefore I'm less likely to leave the company. And how that translates to, when a company focuses on purpose in business, it translates to higher retention rates, lower recruitment costs, and ultimately, it also improved the bottom line for Best Buy because they found a new market that they could help, a new group of customers that they could serve and really create value in the lives of others.
That's an unbelievable story, particularly when you think about Best Buy, for those who may not know, is a big box technology retailer in the US that's been around maybe 25 or 30 years. And I think most everyone would have bet that Amazon would have wiped them out, and yet they found a way to survive. And they did it through having a bigger mission. And they didn't do it through telling their people exactly what to do, but setting that greater purpose to help others. What a great story. Thanks for sharing that.
Actually, if I may add one point, the other thing when you don't have that, tell your employees exactly what to do, they feel more empowered at work too. They feel more creative. They feel more, they are able to come up with more innovative solutions. And you really don't know what people can come up with. And when you give them that power, when you empower them to do their best work.
So incredible. And they get more engaged. I saw a statistic from Gallup last year that said one in four employees in the US feel completely ignored by their manager. 1 in 4, which is an alarming number. And think about this in contrast to that, where you're not only not ignoring them, but getting completely engaged in a mission to grow the business and help others. So important. I have one more question we have keyed up for the starting part of this session here, and then we're going to move to the audience Q&A. So if you haven't put questions in the chat yet, please go ahead and do that as we get into this next question. So Lynn, your argument here, right? Businesses need to shift to more purpose-driven model. If they're feeling kind of stuck, or where do they start, and what can individuals do? So businesses, how do they start, and what can individuals do to play a part as well?
Oh, very big question, and there are 2 parts to that. How can businesses start? I think businesses can start by understanding what their purpose is, and that's digging in deep and understanding what is it that drives them. And the other part is also knowing what you're good at, what you're strong at. What are your assets? Where is your knowledge base? And finding the niche then where you can play a role. In terms of individuals, though, let's put it from a non-business perspective, who we are as individuals. We are consumers, we are employees of companies, and we're investors in companies too. So think about, who do we want to buy from? Who do we want to work with? Who do we want to invest in? What products are we buying? Are we buying more sustainable products? Do we understand who is it that we're interacting with? Are they sustainable? What are their business practices? So I think it all starts with educating ourselves. And in an age where information is really right at our fingertips, we can educate ourselves by reading on company websites as well as financial reports. So that's the first step as individuals. I think then the second step is to really take action about it. If we know that there are certain products that are less sustainable, such as single-use plastic, well, stop buying single-use plastic. Buy less, buy better made products. Less sustainable products may be cheaper today, but it really will only cost us and the future generation, the generation of our children and our grandchildren in the future. Because when we don't take care of our planet, resources will become depleted, and that will impact us in the future. It makes products more expensive. And I think the third step as individuals is then to share what we know and to share what we did with our friends and family so that they may also take part in this movement to create a better planet for all of us and for the future generation.
Don't just get involved, have a voice and share it with others. Lynn, I really appreciate that message. Sanjeev, it looks like we have a few questions in the chat. Can you put those on the screen? Looks like we've got a question here from YK. Lynn, can you see that?
Yes, I can. So change is usually driven from the top and leaders in management. How can we as employees help to influence the right mindset for positive change within the company? Now, I work for big companies, and I feel that it's sometimes easier for change to start from the grassroots, for change to start at the bottom, because then we can experiment with some of the things that work and some of the things that don't work. So for instance, if we work in product development, maybe we can think about, what is a small change? What is a little tweak that we can do in our products to make it more sustainable? If we work in finance, maybe we can think about what are some of the non-financial metrics that we can see whether or not we are creating an impact. And then when we do some of these small tweaks, measure it. I think it's very important. I'm very data driven. I'm a little bit of a numbers geek. I think have a look at what the situation and what the context was before and what it is afterwards, and then see how some of the changes and some of the tweaks that we have done can impact others. And this goes the same. One more example I want to share is us as team managers as well. There is so much that we can do. There's so much that we can influence as team managers. What are the training and development opportunities you can give the people in your team? Are there ways in which you can develop a more diverse and inclusive team? If you are planning to interview someone, have, for instance, maybe an interview panel with people from different backgrounds of yours, because they will have a different opinion as to the people that you could hire. And then when you have a diverse team, how is it that you can make it more inclusive? Because it's not just having a diverse team, but making it inclusive, making the different opinions matter, making the different opinions heard. So those are a few examples I can think of we as employees, rather than people sitting right at the top as CEOs of the company, can do in order to make change for the better.
So many ways to contribute, Lynn. Appreciate you sharing that context. Sanjeev, can we bring more questions on the screen? Is that possible?
What is your point of view on cultural differences? I'm still very top down, especially in many parts of Asia. Very good question, Simone. Gradually to change this culture. Ooh, lots of questions in there, Simone. Thank you very much for that. I think it is possible. I recently read a good book, and it is about changing. I'm blanking on her name. Her name is Erin Meyer. She's a professor at INSEAD. And what she did was she helped the CEO of Netflix scale the culture of feedback across across all the offices. And this is something, if you think about it, feedback now, it might be fairly common in the US, but it's not something, for instance, when they were trying to do it in Japan. So they were different ways in which they incorporated the feedback culture, because feedback is very important to empower the people on the ground, the team on the ground, to be more creative, to be more innovative, to come up with solutions for the business. And what they found in terms of empowering the people in Japan was to give them those questions, those feedback questions ahead of time so that they could prepare. And that actually helped them incorporate and scale the feedback culture in Japan. Whereas in comparison, in the US, they would just have a general feedback meeting, and it could be ad hoc, and it could be on the impulse. With Japan, though, it wasn't that the people in Japan didn't want to give feedback. They were willing to hear, they were willing to also give feedback, but they just had to prepare for it. And so it didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. It's just learning to and understanding what is it that will work in the different cultures. I hope that answered the question, Simon.
What a great way to think about it, to just take it's the same idea, but just taking a more nuanced approach, giving them more time to think about it, and maybe taking a more formal fashion rather than at the coffee machine. That's great. Do we have any others in the chat there?
Retirees there can definitely play a role. I think, again, we are individuals, and retirees have a lot of money where you want to invest and stretch your retirement dollars. So again, understanding what are the companies that you are investing your savings, your retirement savings on. Do you want to invest in oil and gas companies that continue to use unsustainable energy sources? Or do you want to invest in some of the energy companies that are investing and researching on more renewable sources? Companies that are developing ways to regenerate and redistribute the economy. Which companies are creating new jobs for the community? So that is, again, one way as an investor, someone who is trying to stretch their retirement funds, because we have also seen in the past year how much money has poured into sustainable funds, particularly in Europe as well as Asia, more so than the US, actually. Shame on the US, but a lot of money from investors have come in into sustainable funds, and these have outperformed the major stock indices across the world. So that's one way, knowing who is it that you're investing in, and of course, as consumers, just be more intentional about where you are spending your money. Are you buying products that are sustainable? Are you buying less things but better made things that can be recycled? How are we recycling? Are we recycling? And yeah, so just little ways, because I think every little bit counts. And if we all act together collectively and then share the message, we can really shift how things are done.
I really appreciate that mindset, because everyone can do that, right? I think of my own mother in that example, Lynn, where she was recycling and using things more than once long before it was fashionable to do so, and she continues to do so this day. It might be an interesting segue into the question from KGirl23. Sanjeev, can you put that one up?
There has been an increase in criticism for companies who are seen doing performative activism. How should a company respond when companies say, this isn't good enough, do more? Great question, K-Girl. I think it's Kimberly, no? And I think this is really why businesses have to act today, because it's with social media, with all the information that we have online, companies need to really shift their entire business practices. We need to think about first starting with the culture. I think that's important, knowing where we can play in, and then figuring out where the direction, the North Star in which we want to shift our business practices. Then developing the strategy, and then changing business practices and operations in that way. It is no longer good enough to just put on social media a nice marketing campaign to show that, oh, we're doing good. Businesses really need to make a difference in terms of how they think about doing good. And another way that I've looked at it is also to develop the impact model. And there are 3 levels of impact. There's level 1, which is do no harm. And this is basically staying within the legal boundaries, just being ethical, paying your taxes, not throwing your waste into the river. That's just being ethical. That's do no harm. Level 2 is more philanthropic. So think about, in general, corporate social responsibility activities is we give donations, we volunteer our employees' time throughout the year in whether it is community projects or something like that. So these are needed. I'm not saying that this is not good, but this is level 2 impact. But really, I think in an altruistic capitalist world, there is level 3, which is value creation. What is the value that you are creating for the community, for your customers, for your employees, for your suppliers even, and of course then for the planet? I mean, sometimes we don't, as businesses, we don't think about our suppliers, but if we take better care of our supplier network, if we work with them, we understand what are their interests, what are their long-term interests, and what is it that they're struggling with, we could improve our supply chain operations to make that more sustainable. And when that and when we are more sustainable, we can talk about it, because then we are really sustainable holistically, not just from a pure surface level of, hey, I've got now this green campaign that I'm putting up on social media, but we can really talk about it because it shows. We will speak from authenticity, and I really believe that people can see that now. And I hope that answers the question.
I think that another way to phrase that term is greenwashing. I've heard before, where you're sort of doing these things to make it look like you're doing good for others in the environment, but it's really there's not much there. And I really appreciate this concept of getting into the why behind it. Is there another one we can bring up here? Thanks, Sanjeev.
Do you have advice for SMEs how to be more mindful and curious? I think SMEs are generally pretty surviving in today's competitive environment. Thank you. Definitely someone who has read the book. I like to think, what Kanfei was referring to is basically the altruistic capitalist mindset. And it's really made up of 3 mini mindsets, which is a roadmap. It's a toolbox. It starts with being more mindful. And that, for me, what that means is being intentional. Where is our purpose? Where is our strengths? And how is it that we can affect and impact the people and the planet around us? And in terms of curiosity, that is really the toolbox. And that comes in 2 different ways. First, asking questions. What is it that's really causing some of the problems that we have in our planet today, in the community today? Why is there so much inequality? So when we ask these questions, we really clarify and understand the problem that we have at hand, and therefore are better able to solve the problem. And then part 2 of curiosity is really when we are curious, we also learn more. We are in the thinking and the mindset of continuous learning. When we have different perspective from different knowledge domains, from different subjects, we become more creative and more innovative. And this is something then that can help us develop solutions that can solve problems in new ways. And then from on the third perspective is grit. And I take grit from Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit, to mean passion and perseverance. Grit, passion is basically purpose that I've already addressed in the first part of the mindset. And then perseverance comes, how I see perseverance in that form is using it to scale the solution that we've created under curiosity. Going back to the Best Buy mindset, they were struggling very much with Amazon. Amazon was really taking away a lot of the electronics business from Best Buy. And in the past, when we were thinking about the, bottom line at all costs, what he thought was he shifted that problem. He said, let's collaborate. Let's help make the lives better for our customers. And what he did was he offered Jeff Bezos at Amazon, said, let's collaborate. How can I offer Alexa products? How can I offer your connected devices in order to make the lives of our customers better? So instead of fighting and depleting important resources to compete with each other and to grab market share, they expanded the pie. They expanded the size of the business for both companies, because now they help each other in order to enrich the lives of the elderly, in that example that I used before. So 1 + 1 = 3. And I think this is how we can really create value for all the stakeholders in the business, from our customers to our employees, to our community, as well as the planet.
Amazing that they were able to survive by actually partnering with Amazon. I mean, I don't think many people would have bet on that working out. I'm sure the analysts didn't as that news broke. And, when you think about this concept of grit, Lynn, that can be something hard to coach. Do you have any thoughts on how do you bring that into people's lives if you don't see it?
Yes, you know what, John, I think that if you can't see it, you can't do it, and you can't be it. I think it starts with a little bit of a mindset shift. Instead of having people compete with each other, how is it that we can collaborate? How is it that we can help each other? Because, and this is how I saw grit as well in the book. I named it the mindset of the athlete. Because even if you're a marathon runner, if you're a runner, you never train on your own. You always train with someone else. And this is part of grit. How is it that we can build community, build partnerships, and build relationships with each other in order to solve problems? Another example that I like to use is the recent partnership between Adidas and Allbirds. I used to work with Adidas, so I have some understanding of how the business works. I was also part of the strategy, which is called open source, where we worked with other partners, also small companies, particularly small companies, in which to solve some of these problems. Now, Allbirds and Adidas are very much focused on reducing the impact, because we know that the products that we create, which are sneakers, Allbirds and Adidas create sneakers, they end up in landfills at the end of the life of the product. So what they were trying to do is they wanted to create a sneaker, which is on average creates 12 grams of carbon emissions. They collaborated and wanted to come up with a product that could be as little carbon emissions as possible. And recently they launched this product, and it's under 3 grams of carbon emissions. Now, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, you would think this is crazy. Why would two companies working in the same space, developing sneakers, work together? Most of the time, people will be using their valuable resources, hiding a lot of trade secrets, and trying to fight each other. But how it is done today is they are opening up we're opening up the assets in our knowledge base and trying to work together in order to solve the common problem. And this problem of the environment, inequality, it is a common problem. It's our problem. It's not just the problem of one particular company. And so, for instance, with Allbirds, they also develop a midsole that is made of sugarcane. They worked with an SME factory to develop this more sustainable and biodegradable sole. And they didn't keep it for themselves. They opened up the formula. They said, look, we want to make sure that this is something that everybody has access to so that they can make sustainable products too. So anybody who wants to have biodegradable soles for their shoes can use this formula. So I think this is one way in which we can think of, um, just think of like, who is it that's operating within our space? Who has complementary strengths and assets and knowledge that we can collaborate with? And if you think about it like a relationship, like a marriage, for instance, as long as you have the same values, we are able to work together. We are interested in solving the same problems. We have the same values, and this is how we can make the world a better place.
I really appreciate that thinking, this having these values and looking for opportunities to collaborate, and this open source mindset rather than closed is such a big difference. We've seen great examples of it in the world today, but probably not enough of them yet. Sanjeev, do we have time for one more question?
Okay, post-pandemic, what changes can businesses make or should make to revive the economy as well as to make the world a better place? I don't know if we can. We need to wait to revive the. I don't know if we have to wait till the end of the pandemic to make the world a better place. Change doesn't happen immediately. I think it's something that happens day by day, little by little. And if we just start by making little shifts in businesses, just like we as individuals make little shifts in our lives, over time, we might not see it tomorrow, we might not see it next week. But when we look back on a year, we can see how far we have come. It is just like if you started an exercise routine a year ago and you look at yourself today, how much more flexible you are, how much more mobility you have, that is similar to how businesses can impact change. Just start by making little shifts. Think about how you hire. Who is it that you're hiring? Who are the suppliers that you're working with? Talk to them. What is on their minds? What are the problems that they're having? What are their concerns about the supply chain? Talk to your customers. What is it that they want? What's important to them? So going back to the question by Kimberly before as well, it's like, what is it that the customers want? And answering those questions and making those little shifts in order that eventually we will be able to make that change. We don't have to be 100% perfect tomorrow, but by making that incremental change, by making that 1% change every day, eventually we will get to being close to perfect.
I mean, we can all play a part. I love this concept of understanding the landscape all around you as a business leader, as a business, of all the constituents that you touch, from your shareholders to your suppliers, to your customers, all across the board, and really bringing them into a more collaborative role. So a question that we wanted to leave everyone with, that Lynn, I thought, came up with as a brilliant idea to just give you a thought for the week to continue to dwell on this idea and consider it, is, what is your hope for the future, for the next few years? What is the world you want to live in and that you want to leave behind as your legacy and for the next generation? So we'd encourage all of you to just take a few minutes today or throughout this week to really consider that question and think about some of the lessons Lynn shared today in her book that could help you act each and every day to push this mission further forward. Lynn, was there something you want to do with your book here?
Yes. So, I mean, for me, my hope for the future is that it no longer becomes a question that businesses should do good, and if you do good, you will naturally do well. It comes as part of creating value for all stakeholders, and so I also hope that in 2 to 3 years it becomes part of the reporting standards, because this is something that I hold very close to my heart. Not just financials, but all the non-financial impacts as well. What companies have to report on their environmental impacts, as well as their diversity and gender pay gaps, for instance, how much they're investing in the local economy, how many new jobs they are creating. So this is my hope for the next few years, that this becomes a reality. And I want to thank you, John, for being so wonderful and such a great host today. And the other thing, and to thank everyone for your participation. This has been so generous, and I appreciate your time. As a thank you, I would like to offer you to gift an ebook of the Altruistic Capitalist to a friend. So if you want to email me, the email is lynn@altruisticcapitalist.com. Just email me the name of your friend or someone that you know, and I will send that book to them in your name. There's also an email with a link to a survey to just share your final thoughts on today's show. And also you will have a link to, you'll have a chance to put in the name of the person whom you want to give that book to. So thank you so much, everyone.
Lynn, thanks for having me on today. It's great to be here. And I'll just share with everyone, if you haven't read the book yet, it is, I can assure you, there are lessons that we can all learn and take back to our lives and make an impact each and every day. And really what this book, in my view, is about, it's about the power to change the landscape of how things are done today. We don't have to wait for someone else to do it. We can all take action now, make our communities better, our shareholders better, and have a more engaged employee experience, which is always going to have a much bigger positive impact for your company and ultimately your shareholders. Businesses can be a force for good. If you haven't purchased Lynn's book yet or shared it with a friend, as you heard, Lynn's happy to share it with you. And you can find it on Amazon as well, or Barnes & Noble. And I think there's even signed copies available they can maybe get from your website. Is that right?
Yes, they can. Yep. If you go to my website, altruisticcapitalist.com, just email me and I'll have a copy sent to you right away.
And I'd also share, if you haven't signed up for Lynn's weekly newsletter, it's fantastic, filled with continuing to share ideas about this mindset of the altruistic capitalist. And it's a really well-written letter that I've been a subscriber of for several weeks now. But if you're a business leader and you want to have greater purpose and aren't sure where to start, reach out to Lynn. Lynn, thanks for having me on. Thank you, everyone across Asia and Australia, for being here today. We really appreciate your time and consideration for the altruistic capitalist. Thank you so much.